Good morning. I want to talk today about the upcoming lunar month from May 7th through June 6th. So let me see if I can share my screen and we'll let the slideshow begin. And as usual, I just need to do a few housekeeping things, get rid of some panels so that I can see what's going on. So just bear with me. Okay, I think we're ready. So this is lunar month, May 7th to June 6th. And first, I want to do a little bit of review of my expectations for the last lunar month from April 8th to May 7th. And we'll see how things turned out based upon what my expectations were. So, last month I wrote that this will be a very pivotal lunar month. It begins with a powerful solar eclipse on April 8th, where the sun, moon, and Chiron will all be exactly conjunct at 19 degrees 24 minutes of Aries. Some will be wounded, some will heal, and some will transcend. In particular, America, the Middle East, Putin, members of the British royal family, and Pope Francis will all be impacted. They will be covered by me in another PowerPoint presentation on the lunar month for countries and people. And in red below that, I've summarized what I've observed actually happened. So I wrote, as feared, tensions between Israel and Iran increased this month due to the impact of the eclipse on each country. Meanwhile, in America, Chiron returns often manifest as political wounding. And 2 days after the April 20th Chiron return for America, we saw the beginning of a criminal trial involving Donald Trump. I misspelled trial. I'll correct that later. Sorry about that. Okay, my next expectation was a conjunction between Mars and Saturn on April 10th could express itself as either frustration that leads to violence or as a restriction of violence. This conjunction occurs in Pisces, and neither planet is at its best there. An optimal outcome would be a formulation of strategies and actions for peace. And my observation was, fortunately, America got Israel to show restraint in its response to the attack by Iran. And Iran recognized that direct war would not be in its best interests either. So, you might recall that about a week before the solar eclipse, Israel bombed Iran's embassy in Syria. That is technically an attack on Iran's soil. Iran responded about a week after the solar eclipse. It fired about 350 drones, missiles, and hypersonic missiles at Israel. But prior to that, it said that its response would not be one which should lead to escalation, and I believe it counted on Israel and allies to shoot down those missiles. And sure enough, 99% of them were shot down, so no serious harm was done to the country. And then Israel felt obligated to respond, but at the urging of the United States, it engaged in a limited response. It fired about 3 missiles at a radar facility that was near the location, near the place where Iran is refining uranium, which could be used to make nuclear weapons, but it did not attack that facility itself. So it looked like Israel just wanted to send Iran a message that it could attack facilities like that if it really wanted to. Likewise, Iran wanted to send Israel a message that it can uh, attack Israel with hundreds of missiles if it wants to. But fortunately, both sides, I believe, showed some restraint. And even though each side hates the other, neither side wants to get into a direct war with one another at this point. So cooler heads and higher wisdom prevailed, and we averted the possibility of a wider, more horrific war in the Middle East. Okay, next thing I said was that the April 20th conjunction in Taurus of Jupiter and Uranus could stir both technological breakthroughs and rebellion. Well, the achievements of artificial intelligence continue to grow by leaps and bounds, including the worrisome ability to produce incredible deep fakes. They can now make videos of people, replications of their voices, which you can't tell the fakes from the originals anymore. Okay, other tech news has received less reporting, but is equally impressive. Commercial nuclear fusion may become a practical source of energy within 10 years. They're really making a lot of progress with nuclear fusion right now. And I read a story the other day that scientists have made light waves stand still. That is incredible. Also, widespread student protests in America have followed this conjunction. These student protests, they have been stirred on actually by three things. First, there is Pluto, earlier this year having moved from Capricorn back into Aquarius. When that happens, there's always a transfer of power from individuals to the people. And then, of course, the Jupiter Uranus conjunction I'm talking about here that stirs up tendencies toward revolution. That also feeds these protests. And then there is a semisquare between Saturn and Pluto that took effect in the last week of the previous lunar month. And I talk a little bit about that below, but that stirs up tensions and causes some frustration and rebellion. So all three of these things actually have fueled these student protests that we have seen in America and elsewhere in the world. Okay, my next expectation. Also on April 20th, there will be a Chiron return in the USA chart, but I'll say that more about that in my video on countries and people. Well, as mentioned above, the USA Chiron return often results those returns often result in wounding at the political level. And the first criminal trial of Donald Trump began the Monday after the Saturday conjunction. Additionally, the U.S. Supreme Court seems more partisan than ever. Okay. If you have listened to other videos I've done, you've learned that we've been going through a period of a few years where first we had three oppositions of transing Chiron to natal Saturn and the July 1776 charts. And that is now going to be followed by three conjunctions of transing Chiron with natal Chiron. We went through this back in the 70s, where there was a lot of wounding, political wounding, in the form of Watergate and President Nixon. And now we're going through the same kind of things. We've been through the three oppositions of Chiron to natal Saturn, starting the three conjunctions of Chiron with natal Chiron. And we have also been seeing political wounding as a result of the January 6th insurrection And the political leader involved this time is Donald Trump. So, expectations, for better or worse, are being met. And the last thing I wrote for last lunar month was that a semisquare between Saturn and Pluto could raise tensions in the latter part of April and the first half of May. And this semisquare, as I've mentioned, has exacerbated student protests in America, and there are tensions mounting not only over Gaza, but also over the Supreme Court and the Trump trial. Okay, here's my overview for the lunar month from May 7th to June 6th. Tensions in the world will remain heightened through mid-May and a little beyond as a result of the semisquare between Saturn and Pluto. The second half of May will see more optimism, though, as a result of a sextile between Jupiter and Neptune. And a trine between Jupiter and Pluto from the last week of May through the first week in June will probably coincide with even more technological breakthroughs and efforts to address humanitarian concerns. All right, next, a conjunction of Mars with Chiron in the last week of May, however, could manifest as more wounding for the world. The best outcome, though, would be not violence, but the rise of true spiritual warriors who seek enlightenment over war. A lesser outcome would be false spiritual warriors who are driven by religious or political fanaticism. And lastly, an emerging mini grand trine between Jupiter, Pluto, and Neptune that culminates in early June will bring more technological growth, vision optimism, and humanitarian concerns to the forefront this month. This mini grand trine, it's a trine between Jupiter and Pluto and two sextiles, one from Pluto to Neptune, and another from Neptune to Jupiter, completing that triangle. But that will be very beneficial. And overall, this month, I believe, has some more beneficial tension lessening and reducing aspects going on. And here is a graphic that shows when some of these major aspects will occur, when they'll be in effect. This was created with respect to Greenwich, England. So other graphs I show later are done with respect to where I live in Scottsdale, Arizona. And depending upon where I live or where you live, the dates of exactness may differ by day as a result of time changes. But as you can see here, we have Saturn making a semi-square to Pluto. That is in effect through at least mid-May. A little beyond. The orbs here, I think, are about 1 degree. And that creates some tension in the first half of the month for sure. In the latter half of the month, we have Jupiter sextile Neptune. That's going to be very beneficial. Jupiter is growth, Neptune is our dreams and visions. So they're going to be coordinating well with one another. And during at least the last week of May and the first week or two of June, we have Jupiter making a beneficial trine to Pluto. So people's growth and optimism will feel empowered at this time. In the last week of May, though, we have a conjunction of Mars with Chiron. Following the April 8th solar eclipse, we've had Venus and Mercury and now Pluto coming into conjunction with Chiron. These are like aftershocks. This aftershock, though, may be a little bit more jarring because Mars is our drive to increase our level of tension and action. It can work out in good ways or bad ways. We can be active and assertive. We can get things done. or we can be aggressive and impulsive, have accidents, start arguments. So there's a heightened risk or potential for wounding at this point if we go with the lower aspects of characteristics of Chiron. If we go with the higher characteristics of Chiron, Chiron's real urge is for us to transcend the visible world, to go beyond what we can see to what we can't see. In the process, though, our world has to be shaken up a bit. It has to be opened up. If we're too rigid, it has to be cracked, and that's where the wounding comes in. Wounding so the light can enter. So it makes us change our worldview. That's for certain. But Mars will be conjunct Chiron. They're both going to be in Aries, which is more assertive, more aggressive. So we could either have more wounding, more violence or aggression at this point, or spiritual warriors could emerge. People could take that higher inspiration and sweet love of Chiron and they could bring it down to the physical level. They could enact it as policies and behaviors that promote that sweetness of Chiron. So it's a choice here. Are you going to be Darth Vader or are you going to be a Jedi Knight? That is the choice before us at that particular time during the last week of May. Okay, now let's move on to the new moon. And I have listed over here some of the main astrological influences. We have Pluto and a pretty good semisquare, pretty strong semisquare to Saturn. So that creates some tension, some irritation. Saturn is in Pisces. That's not the best place for Saturn because Saturn likes things to be concrete, well defined. Pisces, ruled by Neptune, it erases boundaries. Things are not so well defined here, but this is a place where Saturn can have dreams and visions about what wants to make concrete. And then when Saturn moves into Aries, it can implement those visions, make them a reality. Pluto is power. It's in Aquarius. And that represents power to the people, group creativity, group power in this case. And that is going to be a bit at odds with what Saturn is trying to do in Pisces. Saturn's our drive for control and regulation, but it can result in frustration and delay also. So either the dreams we're trying to bring into manifestation run into some difficulties with the powers that be, or we're just having trouble regulating certain things, controlling certain things, not coordinated well again with the powers that be or that power to the people. Okay, we also have Mercury pretty strongly conjunct Chiron. I think of this as one of the aftershocks of that April 8th solar eclipse where Sun, Moon, and Chiron were all exactly conjunct at 19 degrees, 24 minutes of Aries. We previously, in the last lunar month, had Venus in conjunction with Chiron. Now it's Mercury. Toward the end of this month, Mars comes into conjunction with Chiron. Well, at its best, our minds, our left brains will feel that higher energy of Chiron, that sweeter side of Chiron, which urges us to go beyond the visible world into the invisible world. So this can break up our thinking a little bit, our ordinary thinking. We need to go beyond, we need to be inspired. And with both of these planets in Aries, we can make these higher inspirations a physical reality. Okay, those are the things which could cause a little bit of tension in this lunar month at the full moon, but now we have things which are very good. We still have Jupiter and orb of that conjunction with Uranus, so this is a time for invention and technological breakthroughs. But remember, Uranus can also represent these revolutionary tendencies because Uranus always breaks up the existing pattern. That cracking that Chiron can bring about, it goes full throttle by the time we get to Uranus. Things definitely break up. But this can be a time of creativity and inspiration. Jupiter is growth and expansion. So again, people can have breakthroughs in their thinking. But this also manifests as revolution. So this can fuel some of the demonstrations that are happening in various parts of the world right now. Okay, despite the semisquare between Pluto and Saturn, which is rather irritating, we have a very strong conjunction. I'm sorry, not conjunction, but sextile between the Sun Moon conjunction here and Saturn in Pisces. So at the same time that we're having some difficulty, we're also having other things work out quite well when it comes to bringing these dreams into manifestation. This aspect will give us a little bit more control over those dreams and visions, uh, help us make them a reality. Now, you may think that, or you may look at these two aspects, the semisquare and the sextile, and say, well, that's a contradiction. They're working in different ways, and that's true. But here's the thing with these aspects in astrology. When we mix hot water and cold water together, we get lukewarm water, right? It just evens out. But that's not exactly the way things work in astrology. These different astrological aspects go together like things in a tossed salad. Uh, you can have sweet and sour right next to one another, and you get both flavors at the same time. They don't cancel each other out. So we have some irritation, some difficulties to manifesting our visions coming from the Pluto semisquare to Saturn. But then we also at the same time have some help in manifesting these visions coming from Sun and Moon making a sextile to Saturn in Pisces. Okay, the last three aspects I have here go together, and they're going to become stronger as we go through this lunar month. At the new moon, we have Pluto making a sextile to both Neptune and Mars. Neptune making a sextile to Jupiter. Mars is a bit out of orb of that. But then Jupiter, it's just beginning to make a trine to come into this trine with Pluto. Some people will call this a mini grand trine. You got a trine and then two sextiles completing that triangle. And this is very harmonious. Jupiter is growth, Neptune is vision, Pluto is power. At this particular time of the new moon, Mars is joining in on this a bit. Mars in Aries is manifesting these things as actions in the real world. But Jupiter growth is being fueled by vision and power. And this is going to be overall make this a beneficial month for the world, I think. And this mini grand trine is going to increase in power as the lunar month goes on. Okay, in the week following the new moon, May 10th is a day to keep an eye on because Mars will be making a semisquare to Uranus. At the same time, Venus will be making a semisquare to Neptune. So the semisquare of Mars to Uranus, at its best, this will stimulate creativity. At its worst, it stimulates rebellion and revolution. Venus semisquare Neptune. Venus rules the pleasure principle. It also rules our right brain, our nonverbal brain. And in our nonverbal brain, things which give us pleasure, those are things we like. So that gives us our values of what's good. Things that don't give us pleasure, we don't like, that gives us our values of things that we consider bad. Neptune can bring in some confusion to those things. So our thinking could be a little bit muddled at that day, or we might have just some unusual desires, which in itself may turn out to be pleasant. Who knows? If we go down to May 13th, Sun will be conjunct Uranus. This is sort of like an aftershock of the recent Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. So creativity can be stimulated on this day, or revolution could be stimulated. Either way, this is a day for breaking up the usual routine, the usual pattern of things. And then with Venus making a sextile to Saturn on this day, this will help regulate our right brains and our desires. And it can, again, make it easier to bring these dreams that we're having while Saturn is going through Pisces into the physical reality of Taurus. Okay. And here is a little graph which shows when various aspects will be exact in the week following the new moon, this week from May 7th to May 15th. And let's see, you can see that Mars semisquare Uranus, that's going to be in effect from about May 9th through May 12th. The semisquare creates a little bit of irritation, but this can also stimulate creativity and the muddled thinking of or unusual desires of Venus semisquare Neptune. That is also going to be in effect during much of the same period for these, in this case from the 9th through the 11th. Orb here is about 1 degree. And let's see. And then Sun conjunct Uranus. That is in effect from the 11th through the 14th of May. So that's going to be about a 3-day period, 3 or 4 days. And Venus sextile Saturn happens mainly within that period. So this helps you track the progress of these aspects throughout this week following the new moon. Okay, now we get to the first quarter moon. The new moon, the quarter moons, and the full moon, they're all times of a little extra stress or tension. And there have been statistical studies done by non-astrologers, which show that various kinds of tense things happen at these particular phases of the moon. So it's been verified in various ways that there are tensions that increase at this time. Now, with Sun conjunct Jupiter and Uranus, Jupiter is still with an aspect of that April 20th conjunction with Uranus, and Sun is going to be in between them. So this is, again, a time for creative thought, expanding one's horizons. But for people who aren't such great thinkers, this may be a time of some revolution, rebellious activities, breaking up the existing pattern in different ways. So this may fuel recent events such as the student protests. We have Mercury square Pluto at this time. So Mercury and Aries, Mercury is the left brain, our verbal brain. In Aries, it seeks independence, assertiveness, maybe even aggressiveness. So people's left brain thoughts and ideas at this time, it's coming into conflict with the powers that be. Aquarius represents group creativity and activities. Pluto is power. So there may be some disconnect between what people want and what the powers that be want at this time. This could result in some arguments, for example. We also still have Pluto pretty strongly making the semisquare to Saturn. So there's this underlying irritation and frustration throughout most of this lunar month. So that coupled with Pluto square Mercury, that is going to make things a little bit more contentious. And we have Mars making a semi-square to Sun and Jupiter. Uranus is a little bit out of orb this time, but this is going to stimulate some aggressive tendencies. And again, it may make arguments, impulsiveness, accidents a little bit more common. One thing which is good, though, is that Saturn will be making a pretty good sextile to Venus. This will help our right brain start the work of bringing some of these visions into concrete reality. And this helps regulate our right brain. So the visions individuals are having that they want to make a reality, uh, this will go at this point into the right brain, the nonverbal brain. So we may dream about these things, think about these things, mull them over. And that is a step toward making them real. And then we have also this triangle, beneficial mini grand trine involving Pluto, Neptune, and at this point, Uranus, Sun, and Jupiter becoming stronger. And that is going to help stabilize things throughout the month. It's going to help the powers that be uh, exert their influence in more beneficial ways. It's going to help bring visions into reality more easily. So, whether we're talking about visions involving uh, climate change or the situation in the Middle East or other parts of the world, it's going to be a little better, a little easier to actualize those visions. Uh, these visions will have more power available to them and be able to start bringing them down to the level of physical reality. So that'll make this, in many ways, a good month. Now, the week following the first quarter moon, this may be the most eventful or the most tense in some ways. First, on May 15th, we have Mercury going into Taurus, leaving Aries behind. So this will be a little shift from independence, assertive, aggressive thought to consolidating what you have, uh, stabilizing what you possess and where you are. The 17th, will probably be a particularly tense day because we have three tense aspects that become exact that day: Mercury square Pluto, Mars semi-square Jupiter, and Mercury semi-square Saturn. So look for some heightened tension on that day. On the following day, the 18th, this will be a little bit more beneficial, a little bit more optimistic with Sun conjunct Jupiter, but also Venus conjunct Uranus. That can be good for right brain creativity, and then Jupiter conjunct Sun, growth and expansion of perspective. So May 18th can be pretty good. On the 19th, Sun will be making a sextile to Neptune. That will also be good. Things could feel a little dreamy that day. But that's a good day for visions and for making those visions a little bit more concrete. On May 20th, Sun will enter Gemini, and as we have more planets shifting into Gemini, this puts more focus on things like abstract thinking, uh, communication, and just general curiosity about the world. Uh, it's a time I love because I'm a Gemini and I like to think and I like to explore things I'm curious about. On the 21st, there's a little bit of tension as Sun makes a semi-square to Mars. So people may feel a little bit more irritable, a little bit more argumentative on this day. But on the 22nd, we have Sun trine Pluto. On this day, people will feel empowered. Uh, so, with Pluto in Aquarius, where power has shifted from individuals to the people to groups, uh, and with Sun in Gemini, uh, communications will be good. Uh, discussions with the powers that be will be productive on that day. Okay, here's a graph or graphic which shows us the influences for the week following that first quarter moon. And you can see that this week is dominated by the semi-square between Sun and Mars. So that's why I say this week may be the most uh, tense, argumentative, impulsive, stressful, or accident-prone week of the month. We also have a pretty good semi-square between Mars and Jupiter. This can stimulate our desire for expansion and growth in a good way. It would be nice if this turns out into economic growth and growth in the stock market. I can always use that. But all in all, it could be a week of some uh, impulsive actions, assertiveness, and aggression. And it could be either good assertiveness or it could be bad actions resulting in violence and damage to people. And this brings us up to the full moon, which is sort of the flowering of the month, the culmination of what began uh, at the new moon. And one of the dominant aspects in this chart is that semi-square between Sun and Mars, still creating some tension, some irritation. And we've talked about that. Pluto, semi-square Saturn, is still pretty strong, but the planets are in the process of separating at this point. So that particular stress is it's lessening a bit. We have Jupiter conjunct Venus conjunct Sun at the time of the full moon, and this is actually probably going to make things feel rather pleasant this day in spite of the semi-squares that I just got through talking about. Jupiter expands things, so it adds to growth. It makes us feel optimistic. Venus is the pleasure principle. You put Sun, Venus, and Jupiter together, and you're feeling good. Pluto is going to make a trine to this Jupiter, Venus, Sun conjunction down here. And that is just going to add extra power to these good feelings. You're going to have feelings of growth and pleasure, and Jupiter just strengthens that, adds extra power to the mix. And we also have Pluto making a sextile to the moon. In going over these lunar months, I don't usually talk about aspects to the moon that much because the moon is moving on pretty quickly. But this is a moment in time when the moon becomes involved in some of this other good stuff happening. And you can look and you see two very beneficial triangles this month. Many grand trines indicated by these blue lines. We got this little triangle here, and then this one here. So at the time of the full moon, there's a lot of things which will produce good feelings and reduce tensions. And we have Jupiter, Venus, and Sun making a sextile to Neptune. So we feel expansive, we feel good, we feel visionary. This is a good time, again, to work on bringing those visions and dreams into reality. This is also a good time for meditation or any of these higher uh, feelings or perceptions that we describe as spiritual. And Neptune is still making a good sextile with Pluto. This whole Jupiter, Neptune, Pluto triangle is getting stronger at this point, very well defined. And when Neptune and Pluto are making a sextile, then dreams and visions are empowered. People have dreams of how the world should be, and they have the empower to enact those dreams. So this full moon, by and large, I think it looks very favorable, very pleasant. And in the week following the full moon, these are some of the aspects that will become exact. On May 23rd, there are a lot of beneficial uh, aspects, things going on that become exact, which will make us feel good and make me feel good in particular, because May 23rd is my birthday. I'll be 72 years old on this day. But among other things, Venus will be conjunct Jupiter. Venus will be exactly sextile Neptune. Venus will move into Gemini on this day. So the right brain, the nonverbal brain that tells us what we value as good, what we value as not so good, that takes on a little bit more abstract quality at this point in Gemini. Thinks a little bit more abstractly and analytically, becomes a little bit more curious about things. The Jupiter sextile Neptune, our optimism and our dreams that work together very, very well. So May 23rd should be a very good day. The day of the full moon. Yep, full moon on May 23rd. Okay, now let's see. On the 25th, we have Venus making exact trine to Pluto, empowering our nonverbal brain. Those things we like to do, that will feel good. On the 25th, Jupiter goes into Gemini. So we're starting to get this Gemini energy building, and that is going to be very good for not simply communication, but abstract abstract thought and intellectual discovery. Uh, this is a good time to think about things. As the Moody Blues said decades ago in one of their songs, thinking is the best way to travel. So explore things with your mind. Think about your visions, your dreams, your hopes, and it'll be a good time. On the 27th, Mercury makes a sextile with Saturn. Mercury is our left brain, our analytical, verbal brain. Saturn is control and regulation. So this is a good time for disciplined thought, examining things in detail, doing some science. On the 29th, though, things may be a little bit more contentious. Venus, our nonverbal brain, it makes a semisquare to Chiron. This could result in some wounding. And then Mars at the same time will come into conjunction with Chiron. This is another aftershock from the April 8th solar eclipse that involved Chiron. But with Mars often manifesting aggressively and with Chiron often manifesting among the masses as wounding, uh, this could work out in ways uh, which are not so good, not so pleasant. So the worst case scenario is there could be some violence on the 29th. Uh, what people like, that could be disrupted by the semisquare from Chiron, and uh, there could be a combining of aggression with wounding, and things could work out in a not so good way on this particular day. The best possible scenario would be something like a sudden right brain enlightenment as the energy of Chiron. Uh, these impulses or flashes from the unseen world break through into our nonverbal right brain, and they may stir us to action in a good way so that, again, we become Jedi Knights instead of Darth Vader. We'll probably get a little bit of both on May 29th, but for the majority of people, for the masses, there is more likely to be some wounding, aggression and wounding rather than enlightenment and spiritual warrioring about, so to speak. Okay, if we look at the graph for the week following this full moon, well, we can see the dominant aspect is Jupiter sextile Neptune right here. This lasts throughout most of the week, and this is going to be very visionary and very optimistic. Uh, let's see, Venus semi-square Mars, and Mars conjunct Chiron. That is going to kick in toward the end of this week. So it starts out good with Jupiter sextile Neptune. By the time we get to the 28th, 29th, then it really starts to turn. On the 27th, we see a little bit of that turning toward possible aggression as shown by Venus semisquare Mars. Okay, then we get to the third quarter moon. And in this third quarter, we still have Mars strongly conjunct Chiron. So, this is where those aggressive, wounding tendencies could come about rather than the creation of more spiritual warriors. At its best, we get more spiritual warriors at this time. spiritual warriors in a good way, by the way, where you sense that higher inspiration from Chiron and you enact it in physical reality. Through Mars, you translate higher love into action. Uh, but for the masses, for the unenlightened masses, unfortunately, the masses are less enlightened, though we keep evolving. Eventually, we may get to a point, humanity may get to a point where uh, when something like this happens, more people are enlightened than unenlightened. But assuming that most people are not at that point, we're a bit more likely to get some wounding, coupled with aggression. This could lead to fanaticism, fanaticism that leads to fighting. Okay, so things get a little bit more tense at the third quarter moon. We have Mercury conjunct Uranus. Uh, as I keep saying, this can lead to greater creativity for the left brain, but those who are not so inclined, this could just lead to more revolution, which can be disruptive to oneself and society. Chiron and Mars are going to be making a semi-square to Venus. Venus is the right brain, the nonverbal brain, and things we like, what we value as good, what we value as bad. The relationship here is now a little tense uh, with Venus and Gemini. It's sort of like our right brain is driving our intellectual analysis. So this is where our right brain has already reached the conclusion, and then we try and use our left brain to justify what we're doing and what we believe. With the semi-square from Chiron and Mars, uh, that can create some problems. Uh, People become convinced in their right brains that maybe some very aggressive wounding path is the right one to take, and then they try and justify it. Fortunately, we also have some good aspects at this time. Oh, before I get to that one, we got the Pluto, still semi-square Saturn, but that is lessening quite a bit now. It's really on the way out. So now we get to the good aspects. Sun conjunct Venus, that is going to feel very pleasant. And then we have this triangle becoming quite strong, that mini grand trine, where Jupiter is trine Pluto, Jupiter is sextile Neptune, and Neptune is sextile Pluto. So some tensions arising possibly from Mars conjunct Chiron, and Mars and Chiron making a semi-square to Venus, but at the same time, good things like Venus conjunct Sun and this now pretty strong mini grand trine between Jupiter, Pluto, and Neptune. That will bring in some of the good, pleasant stuff, so it's not all going to be bad. Okay, on May 30th, Mercury will be exactly conjunct Uranus, so this is a very good day for intellectual creativity. For those who are so inclined, for others, it could make you a little hyper and more likely to participate in revolution activities for breaking up patterns either in society or your own life. June 2nd will be outstanding because on this day, Jupiter will make an exact trine to Pluto, and Mercury will make an exact sextile to Neptune. So Mercury sextile Neptune, that brings these visions harmoniously into our left brain, our verbal brain. And Jupiter trine Pluto, this empowers our optimism, our growth. Now, this is a place where earlier I had mentioned that this trine would be exact on third, That is going to be with respect to Greenwich, England, people living in Great Britain, the United Kingdom, but here in Scottsdale, Arizona, that's where this table was set up for. That becomes exact on the 2nd. On June 3rd, Mercury moves into Gemini. That is its home sign. So it's going to like that. That's going to make things a little better when it comes to abstract thinking, communication with others, and to just being intellectually curious about things in general. Great time for thinking. On June 3rd, we have Mercury making an exact trine to Pluto, so our left brains become empowered. Communication with the powers that be will go along smoothly. And on June 4th, we have two good aspects. Mercury conjunct Jupiter, our left brains are going to feel very expansive and optimistic, ready to grow. And Venus conjunct Sun, our right brains uh, and things we like to do that we're going to feel very good. Things will feel expansive and pleasant on June 4th. Okay, if we look at this graphic for the week from the third quarter moon to the next new moon, uh, the dominant aspects are Jupiter trine Pluto, that lasts the entire week, and Venus conjunct Sun, which lasts almost the entire week, at least about 3/4 of the week. So this last week will probably feel pretty good, as will the week before that. It's only that second week of the lunar month where things are the most tense. Uh, but remember too that when we get into that time of, let's see, Mars, Chiron and Mars making a semisquare to Venus, that can also raise some of the tensions. Mars conjunct Chiron and semisquare Venus. That raises some tensions, but overall we have some very good things going on in this final week of the lunar month. And that brings us to the next new moon. I'm not going to go over this in detail, but on the tension side, we'll have Saturn making a square to the Sun, Moon, Venus conjunction down here. The Sun, Moon, Venus conjunction, that by itself is very pleasant, very favorable. But Saturn brings in some frustration, restriction, uh, some blockages, some barriers surrounding that pleasantness. The semi-square between Pluto and Saturn is now pretty much over, but on this day, Pluto will be making a sesquiquadrant to the Sun, Moon, Venus conjunction. So what people want to do intellectually, what they're talking about, will be a little at odds with the powers that be here of Pluto and Aquarius. So we got some tension created there. And that can result, these aspects can result in more frustration and more rebellion. What people are thinking isn't fitting in with some other things. But at the same time, we also still have this mini grand trine between Jupiter, Pluto, and Neptune, still pretty strong, still in effect. Okay, and this uh, chart here, it shows aspects throughout the month when they're going to be exact, when they're in effect, and it gives you a quick overview of both May and June of 2024. In case you want to refer back to this. And this also shows you a lot of the uh, aspects and effect at a glance. So Here we started out with Saturn, semisquare Pluto, pretty strong for at least the first half of May. Uh, Following that, though, we have Jupiter sextile Neptune. That's when things feel more expansive, a little bit more visionary. That's followed in the last week of the lunar month by Jupiter trine Pluto, when our growth and expansion really become empowered and things feel pretty good. Okay, that is going to be it for this lunar month. Let me stop sharing my screen. And I need to put my camera back up here so you can see me. Whoops. Ah, now I've come back into focus again. There's a little Neptune moment there where I was blurry, but now I'm back. So that's it for the lunar month uh, from May 7th through June 6th. This will be followed in a few days by another video on how the lunar month will impact particular countries and individuals. So I hope you watch that one too. Uh, there are going to be some tension, some revolution this month, some aggressive moments, but overall, we have some very good aspects which are beginning to develop this month. So we're going to see some growth, some vision, some good things being empowered by good aspects to Pluto. So I hope you have a good lunar month, and I hope you join me in the future for some more videos. But for now, I'll just say so long and be well.